Hello, everyone on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. My name is Thomas of Broad Street Hockey, and I am joined today by Will Scouch of Scouching.ca. Will, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I went to the
Yeah.
dentist this morning, so I'm all
Perfect.
cleaned up, had a nice morning, so looking forward to doing what we're about to do. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah. I mean, like it. So we've been doing these like shift by shift kind of streams of just like it's a little bit more casual than like the typical
Mhm.
like super high end analysis that you sometimes bring on the video room and everything.
Sure.
It's a little bit more just like passive and just like, okay, let's just like introduce a lot of people to these players that they don't normally get to see, and they hear about and read about and everything like that, but they don't.
Mhm.
It's not an immediate like, I don't know what to see with my eyes other than maybe highlights.
Right.
So it's just a way to do that. And immediately when I started going through prospects of like, well, first we started Grabenkin when he joined the Flyers, and then of course we got to do Luchenko, and then immediately I was like, well, Barkey's like one of the most fun
Oh
players
yeah.
in the whole organization, and then
Oh yeah.
your name came to mind of like to bring on, because I know that you're a big fan of how electric Barkey is.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Barkey play since he was 16. He plays kind of close to where I live, so I've seen him quite a lot. And I mean, I love the whole story with him where he's just this rambunctious, sort of undersized, really high-end pace and skill level guy who also has a bit of a jerk streak to him, which I love. He's a bit of a little rat, a guy who definitely likes to push the envelope and get under your skin a little bit. And then he ends up with the Flyers, right? And I'm going, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I could see how he'd fit in Philadelphia one day. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he's going to be as good as I've seen him to be, and how good I hope he can be in the future, especially with the Flyers.
Yeah. I feel like it's just tailor-made situation. What so before we kind of hit play with this video, so this is the January 10th game against Sagan, Windsor, actually.
Yeah.
Similar jerseys, but against Windsor. Um, before we kind of start this process, what could people kind of look out for? Like, what are key aspects of just any game that you might see from Barkey?
I mean, the biggest thing that always stands out to me is just how quick he is. The combination of feet and hands with him are really,
Mhm.
really good. Like, you need undersized guys to sort of play with that high energy level of play here. Like, he loves to push teams back and get deeper into the offensive zone and use skill to cross guys up. And just the quickness everywhere all over the ice is really apparent with him. And he also, the thing too is, he's not one of these sort of skilled forwards that kind of takes the foot off the gas. This is a guy who back checks, gets involved, uses his speed on both sides of the puck, which to me is a must as well. So really it's just how quick he is with his hands and his feet, and how quickly he can adapt to play and change his view of the ice and back check with his speed and all that stuff, and how all of those things intertwine with him, I think is a really, really good combination.
Yeah. I remember clipping from this. You're definitely going to see a lot of the speed, a lot of the like forechecking. I think there's one shift that like happens almost immediately. I'd really want to show, and it's always the one that like the Barkey shift that I always love, of just like him just going hard against a guy at the back boards, just like for a little bit separate from play, but just like totally just
That's what he
looking
does,
for
man. Yeah,
just totally
that's
just
his
looking
game.
for it.
Yeah, that's his game. I love it.
Okay, let's get going. Let's not waste
Yeah.
any time here. All right, so 86.
Yeah.
I should probably put up a little thing. That's what I've been
86
doing.
left winger
86 left winger.
right now, yeah.
There is a. Oh my god. Should be a ticker or something. Number. I love to do this on live. I'm sure you're.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, doing it live is always a lot of fun.
There we go.
There you go.
Very small, but whatever.
It'll do. It works.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's get going.
Yeah.
Let's So yeah, there he is. Yep.
Well, yeah, and that's against a player much larger than him, right? Like he's just that's what he does. He's fearless and just goes.
Yeah, just a little quick one. So yeah, he's playing with Sam O'Reilly and Blake Montgomery, the Sens
Yeah.
prospect right now. There it is. And again, if there's anything that you notice or want to point out, just yell at me to pause.
Well, and like right there, I mean, like you saw him just quickly get a little bit of space behind the net, and make himself a passing option, and and then just sort of taking a second to take a look and throw it back out to his defenseman. I mean, like
Yeah.
throws it through the slot, but you see that sort of like combination of quickness, but also like calmness to him, which
Yeah.
is always good to see. And, like, the thing that stands out to me too about London as a whole is just how structured they are. Like, very often,
Yeah.
you see them just even just there, he just off of a face-off, just the circling around in your own end, offering support. That's the other thing that you need to do is, like, the awareness of the structure that you're playing within and making yourself an option, and, like, this isn't just a guy who gets the puck and does whatever he wants and you do whatever, right? Like, he's been successful in it with a team like London for a few reasons, and I think it doesn't take long to pick up why that's the case and why London's been so good.
Yeah. Would you have liked to see him with like a Torts like system? Like if hypothetically Torts is still here in like 2 to 3 years.
Well, I mean, they're right there. It's just nice patience to
Yeah.
go around the back and wait for a
Let's
lane and go for it. Um, like he
get back
takes it
there.
all the way around. No one touches him, and just throws it through the seam, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what he does. But I mean, in terms of Tortorella style hockey, I mean, I can't say I've seen a tremendous amount of the Flyers this year, but I feel like he's the type of guy that I think Tortorella could have used pretty well. Um, I mean, I think for him, it's just kind of you have to get over the fact of the number that he is when you look at his height. Like, I think you just kind of have to get over that because if he's a couple inches taller, I feel like people feel very differently about him. But even yeah, just there, like off the puck,
Mhm.
making yourself a shooting option, being ready. He just kind of sneaks his way over there,
Yeah.
right? Like he cuts to the left there. Now there's a big enough gap to make a shot. He doesn't get the puck, but even then, right? Like it's a structure thing too, probably, right? Like he might just
Yeah.
be, I'm a shot target and I'm a threatening offensive player, so maybe Windsor focuses on him and it creates an opportunity elsewhere, right? So,
Yeah, like that wouldn't have got to the point. It would have it probably kept Windsor down lower than they
right,
would have liked, right? Just
exactly,
having Barkey in the slot there.
yeah,
Who's on the power play. Easton
yeah,
Cowan.
yeah. We all know the power play doesn't count. It's
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
I should have just cut all this out, right?
yeah, the power play doesn't matter. It's all good. I mean,
Yeah.
and this team is just the London Knights
It's
this year
disgusting.
have been a machine. Like
Yeah.
they always seem to be somehow they find a way. Yeah, like there he draws pressure out to the middle, like it's super simple, but it's these little things that can add
Yeah.
up, right? Like he's wide, he drives inside a little bit and then just throws it there. Like that could have been a one-touch pass into the crease there down low from Easton Cowan. Obviously, I think Windsor was blocking that lane, but those little plays, like you
Oh,
put those together, and there he almost scores a goal, right? Like
yeah.
it's those, his puck possession ability and patience is a really, really good combination. And I think you're seeing a lot of that in this game already. Like, yeah,
And do you think that's translatable to the NHL? Like, say if he gets a little bit more muscle, like builds some more mass, like he should next
I
year.
mean, I think I'm betting on him to do it,
Mhm.
especially because he has that sort of tenacity as well, right? That sort of, I feel like if he's a guy who is over the boards and on the ice and he's not scoring, I feel like he still can contribute to the team, which I think is valuable. Um, but in terms of like his ability to protect the puck and keep it down away from his body and puck protection for him at
Mhm.
the NHL level is going to be like really paramount because he's good enough to do pretty much anything he wants at this level with the puck on his stick. And the NHL is just there's bigger guys, they're faster, and he's going to need to sort of battle through that pressure. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't. I still think it's good enough, right? Like even just here, he's hounding a guy down low, causes a turnover below the goal line. London doesn't maintain possession on it, but I see so many things where I'm going, if he's not someone worth betting on, then who is, right? Like especially if you want more of these offensive guys. Just throws a hit in the corner there. Like, he's doing a whole lot of different things, which I think is really good. You're contributing in some way on almost every shift. At least it seems so far.
Yeah, like he's just everywhere. Like he's so active in, I think, just every zone really.
Yeah,
that was my first impression of just like he was
Like,
immediately noticeable. Yeah,
and
that's
there, like, just pure skill,
just
and he
through.
like, that's a big guy. That's Ilya Protas, 37, who's having a great year as well, but
Mhm.
he just out races him, keeps the puck away from him, and Protas is big. Like, Ilya Protas, I think, is 6'4", I think,
Yeah,
6'5".
and close to his brother, kind of.
Yeah, well, yeah, and his brother is,
He's
I
like
don't know what happened.
6'6".
I don't know what they're feeding his brother, but he had a heck of a season too, or is having. But
Mhm.
yeah, like, his ability to just protect the puck against bigger guys like that in some way with his speed or where he's placing the puck is super important. And then the pure skill in the offensive zone to try to just get through defensemen. It, what more do you want, right? Like, especially in an offensive player.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's so him next to Ilya Protas is insane. Like, it's like a tree and a child. It's crazy.
It
But
is so it's so funny to see him off the ice too. Like there's like clips of him. I think it's from last year though, but like of like Cowan, Bonk, and him like always just hanging
yeah,
around, and it's just like they're literally children. Like they
yeah,
look like
I
guys
know.
that are like 12. Like,
I do have a theory that if you just look like a child, it affects your standing with scouts. Like, if your face just looks like a child's face and your face
right.
looks like a 40-year-old, then you get two very different reads, even if you might be the exact same player.
Yeah. The Colby
That's
Barlow is like, why is a first round pick? Or
right,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a man who wears a letter on his jersey, and that's
Right.
good enough, But no, I mean, it's I try not to take myself too seriously, but that is something I have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
theory about,
Yeah. Even that.
Yeah, like, he almost
Like,
comes up with the puck on that, and this is the kind of thing that when I like, it's such a good example when you really watch shift by shifts of a player. Like, I think that was a nice defensive play from Sam O'Reilly, but, like, I think he just, when I look at the game, it's sort of like a collection of positives and negatives, right? Like, what are the
Mhm.
goals of the game? What are you trying to do in what situation you're in? And when I look at a guy like Barkey, I go, I mean, yeah, he's a little small and definitely not the heaviest kid in the world, but, like, I don't. He makes up for it with just the effect he has on the game, with the aggressiveness and the like, getting in on the forecheck and using your speed effectively and just really driving the game in the right direction rather than just playing a more, I guess, safer, passive, you know, um, less technical and just sort of simpler game that might be, safer, so to speak, at higher levels. But I don't know. I like guys who try to move the needle, guys who try to push the game. I think that's the fourth or fifth try he's had of the game trying to put a puck into the slot. There wasn't
Yeah.
anybody there, but like, you might want him to have a better look, but because I think there were about 4 Spitfires in the slot there, but like, it's that tendency though. He's not. He's yeah. I mean, and to do stuff like this in the NHL, you're going to need to be like elite, and I
Yeah.
probably feel like he's not going to be doing that. What we just saw, that blue line, that overhandling on the blue line and trying to sort of go wide there. Like, if you turn the puck over there in an NHL game, like, that's a 2-on-1 or a breakaway or something coming the other way. You don't want that. It's funny. I saw a guy like Connor Bedard doing that in junior a lot. I think he still kind
Oh
of
yeah.
does that in the NHL, but maybe not out as far from the net as he used to do it. But that can burn you, right? Like, if you're taking that risk.
Even
Yep.
that. Well, that set up a goal, obviously, but
Yeah,
or
that
he
set up
just
a
coming
goal.
by, stripping a little bit,
Yeah.
just
Just
disrupting play, just in
yeah,
general.
just disrupt. I mean, he's the left winger there. Like, the play kind of came to him, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He could have flown the zone and thought, okay, someone else will cause this turnover. Yeah,
Sorry, I
that was
just
great.
point that
Yeah.
out. You're just like running over Montgomery just on the goal zone.
Yeah. He's great. I love like he just has, even in the arena, right? You can just tell that he's a guy that he just seems like so much fun, and
Yeah.
and he plays with that, and I don't know, like maybe I'm too emotional about the sport and like watching it and how I'd want a team to play, but guys like Denver Barkey, man, like they have a spot on my team. Just these, tenacious, aggressive, skilled, fun to watch, fun to be around type guys that really know what they're doing. And now he's killing penalties.
That's killing
So
penalties.
here you are. But again, like he's a guy who I think killing penalties, it makes a lot of sense. Like
Mhm.
he's fast and aggressive and really really annoying. So
I mean,
like
like
that's what you need.
Travis Connecting last year, I don't know if he led the league in shorthanded goals or like the Flyers didn't overall, but Bradshaw obviously like drew something up that I think the league caught on to this season. But last season they like were scoring shorthanded goals like almost every other game, and it was
Right.
Connecting and Lawton doing like a little bit of the heavy lifting, and then Connecting just being this cut type
Right.
of player, just being super annoying to play
And
against
right
and
there,
having
that
the
was
speed.
kind of right there. That's kind of how you see that happen, where you
Yeah,
see Barkey flying the zone there when they gain possession down low, right? Like I think it's Bonk who gets the puck here. Like Dickinson kind of causes a
yeah,
turnover a little bit, and then Bonk gets possession of it. Like so, Barkey recognizes that and he's gone, right? Like I mean, Bonk just rifles it, but if that's a pass that hits Barkey, like he's wide open in the middle of the ice, and it's a
mhm,
one-on-one from there, right? Like, but and what I like to do sometimes is do a thought experiment of like, well, what if things happen differently, right? Like, what if Bonk hit the boards in his own end and it sort of trickled into the neutral zone and Barkey couldn't get there? I'd rather have a guy like Barkey who, yeah, he flew the zone and looked for that breakaway and everything, but he also has the speed and and the wherewithal to cut back, get back into the defensive zone quickly, even if he's at the center line, and become part of that penalty killing structure again, because you don't want guys on the penalty kill who are like, oh, there's an opportunity for a shorthanded goal, I'm gone, and then something happens and they just don't have the skating ability or the wherewithal to get back and do the coverages they need to do.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. There you go. It is fun to imagine both Barkey and Luchenko on the same, not the same line, but like even just on the same
Oh yeah.
team, of just how
Yeah.
annoying they're going to be playing, like to play against.
Yeah. I mean, I both those players I love. I think they're, they're different. They're definitely different players, but
Yeah.
I think that they complement each other okay. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd play them together, but I could see them, being, boy, he's been killing a lot of penalty minutes the last little while. Um, but that's the OHL sometimes,
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time in the box. But yeah, I mean, like they could definitely play on the same team and bring different things to the table for sure. Like I don't know. I think the Flyers have done a pretty good job filling the stable with at least guys that have a pretty good chance of being solid NHL players in some way.
Yeah, I feel like that's just like it's obviously not going to be a prospect pool that this is a deeper conversation than just watching
Yeah,
one player, but um it's not a prospect pool that's going to be like Buffaloes or whatever, where it's just like full of high end guys that the public scouts kind of love,
right.
or just like love in rankings or whatever. But I wouldn't be surprised if like a decent amount of them become impact players.
Yeah, they have a bit of everything, which is nice. You
Yeah,
kind of need
yeah.
that. Ah, he sucks. Oh well, that was it. He had a nice run. It was a
Yeah.
good. It was a
Sorry,
good
goal again.
30-minute.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a good
key in.
30-minute part of a game, but got scored on
Yeah.
on the
Stream's
power on the
over.
penalty kill. Yeah, game's over. It's over. Waste of a draft pick. Yep, there goes Elia Protus doing his
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, what
You
can you
know.
do?
Yep.
killing another penalty.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those games.
Yeah, undisciplined, the London Knights.
Yeah.
I mean, we should also mention that Barkey, I think, has 9 points in 3 playoff games so far for London. So
Is that the case?
yeah, he scored 3 points last night. Yeah, it was last night that Knights played, but I mean, it is Owen Sound, so. But
no comment.
Yeah, there's a there's I know there's a couple players like Harry Nancy and
he's all right. Yeah,
Bouillet.
they have a couple.
Yeah,
but they're not the London Knights.
They're not.
They are absolutely not the London Knights. So this is Denver Barkey killing penalties, just doing his coverages and just.
I mean, when we say shift by shift, we mean shift.
Yeah, literally. Shift. Yeah, no trickery here. It's just it is what it is.
I mean, and it's not a perfect science. I don't know how you pick your games with like if it's just a game that you're noticed, but I tried to pick a game where like he put some points on the board and like I noticed stuff happened.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a cherry picking of a game, but
yeah.
But yeah, like it's not the perfect game, but
I mean, I don't do it too complicated. I generally try to focus on really good competition in their league.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to I didn't want to see him like play against the Pete's or whatever.
Yeah, like you don't want to see him score 5 points against like Guelph, right? Like you don't want that. But so and generally I try to like split pretty evenly home and away. If only to like just get different camera angles and different views on a guy. But also, maybe especially a team like London, there's definitely a home team boost there because that's basically an NHL arena. Like that arena in London is rocking and it's usually jammed. So yeah, it's a pretty crazy environment there. But then I also honestly like for the data work I do, it's just like I check in once a month generally. Just because the season is long and there's a lot of players to look at, but I fill things in. I fill things in with video stuff in between, but in terms of data, yeah, it's like once a month and home and away generally split and usually against as good competition as I can find, unless I can't do anything about it.
Easton Cowan with a bad play there, but
yeah, I mean the thing about Barkey that I think is going to be the big thing to learn and pick up on, and I think there was an instance a little bit earlier in this power play, but like he's going to need to be really pinpoint and really quick to make the right decision. Like he can't goof around. And I think that he's a type of player that a lot of coaches will have on a bit of a knife's edge of like expectations and going, okay, like we're going to put you on the power play in the NHL, but we don't want you eating the puck along the half wall on the entry, right? And just like nullifying and needing someone else to come bail you out, right? Like that's you're going to need to get the puck down low or dump it in or chase after it or whatever. Because that's something, you see a lot more in junior, that sort of on the power play, like I'm going to enter the offensive zone and I can eat it along the boards and get some help and all that stuff. Like it happens in the NHL too, but I think in an ideal world, especially for a smaller guy like Barkey, trying to keep things in open ice and off the boards and structured and set up is going to be pretty important, I would say.
Yeah, it's almost like the like we saw it a little bit with Bobby Brink had a little bit of that when he started in his rookie year. It was kind of just like a little bit thought too long with the puck, and I don't know how I didn't see a lot of him in Denver, but yeah, it was just getting up to that pace.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember Bobby Brink from when he was 17 or so, and he was the guy on his team. Like that's the thing, right? Like I think it can be a tough adjustment, and I think it's a tough adjustment for guys that I like personally, where a lot of them are the possession guys. Like they're the guys who are responsible and good at a lot of these, possession focused traits and everything. And when you have a lot of that, or when you get to the NHL, it's like you kind of have to adapt and learn to do things quicker, right? Like make decisions quicker, right? Like in the NHL, guys don't have the puck generally for that long, right? Their puck touches are pretty quick. So understanding how to best utilize the second or two or three you have with the puck is a make or break, right? So if these kids are used to, like, yeah, like if Denver Barkey's here and used to doing this, it
Yeah.
can work, in the NHL. But to me, in the NHL, he's going to need to be a bit quicker getting up the ice, a bit quicker stopping up there. But he did spot that passing lane really well and almost got a pass clean through for a scoring chance, which would have been like the third of the game for him. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the learning curve, is like, it's just a different world, right? And I mean, I like that he's pestering guys and hounding guys, and that's great. It's just the results, now Windsor has possession in the defensive zone. So on one hand, it's great to see him back checking and stick checking and trying to get in the way and be annoying. But I could see people make the argument of like, well, what difference does it make if they get through you and into your defensive zone and get set up and get scoring chances? If, you know, obviously I would like him to be involved and trying to do those things, but um yeah, like I see that with smaller players a lot too, where they do get involved and they're very tenacious and everything, and like you love that they're trying to stick check all the time and try to knock pucks loose and everything, but it doesn't work as much as you think it might. And at the end of the day, you kind of just go, well, you're in your defensive zone anyway, and so maybe a bigger player is more effective in that situation or something, even if they don't bring the same sort of possession and offensive ability. I don't know. Hockey's a weird game, right? Like there's a lot of spectrums
It's
of
yeah.
what guys can do and can't do, and how things mix together, I guess, matters. I don't know. It's going to be interesting though. Like even just then, right? Like losing a little stick check situation like that, leading to an offensive zone exit on the power play. Like I might be nitpicking a little bit, but
Yeah.
like Greentree's bigger. Greentree's a bigger player. Um, Obviously he didn't cleanly get right through him, but that I've seen Barkey in this game a few times in these little interactions without the puck, and he's doing the right things, but the end result isn't really optimal, which we'll see. But I don't know. I'm not trying to say he's
Yeah.
been like no good, but
Yeah.
even then, right? Like just there, he got in. He's doing the right thing, right? Like he gets down low. He's in the offensive zone, and he just doesn't really have
Overskates a little
not
bit.
much of a
Yeah.
factor there and gets bailed out by Montgomery, right? So, you
It,
know,
it's like doing these things of like almost like in passing. Like it's not so much of like commitment to doing that. Like even just there in the
yeah,
stick check, also that like where Windsor was able to leave the zone. It was
yeah,
like almost he overskated a little bit and did like tried to go behind him with the stick a little bit too
yes,
much.
yeah, and so yeah, and I think that's a bit of a downside with these really speedy kids as well. Like overskating where opponents are going with the puck, like that can also be problematic. But then here he goes, right? Like then there's this.
Right.
Like that's a great sequence there from Barkey that very nearly leads to a really good scoring chance, and he quarterbacks almost that whole thing. So, like, this is the thing about the sport that I love, is like watching these guys. It's about the positives and the negatives and how they interact, right? Like, how do you? I think that's the ultimate question. Is like, how do you weigh what we just saw with Denver Barkey and some of the other sort of finer detail interactions that we've seen where it just hasn't gone his way? Like, how do you weigh those two things? In the junior league, very obviously, considering how productive he is and how good his team is and how good they are with him on the ice, obviously it's working out. But in the NHL, it's a very different story. And I think it remains to be seen. But again, I don't know. I just love how he plays. I love sort of the way he's wired, which I think is what really matters. And like, yeah, again, just setting up like that.
The
And he
goal.
didn't
There you
even,
go.
he set that up it was a little sloppy, but he set it
Mhm.
up. And like, if you want, maybe wind it back just before, because the way he set this up, like I think he sort of fades wide, like he fades out a little bit. And yeah, his eyes were focused on the blue line, right? Like
So yeah.
he's looking out towards the blue line until the last second, and then just perfect pass through a seam that was opened up. like just that vision, right? That ability to, yeah, his eyes are on the blue line now, and then boom, he looks and it's in, right? Like that kind of thing is sort of a higher end playmaking line of thinking, right? Which, you know, the patience and the thought process there was great. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I you want to see stuff like that. Like that's what I love to see, and he does that all the time. Yeah, really
Yeah.
nice.
And I was bonk there, so we'll
Yeah,
try. You might do another shift by shift of bonk or
go
something. Defense
Flyers.
is always hard, but yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's more difficult. There's less going on,
Yeah,
but
it's like, oh, well, there he is.
yeah.
Yeah. To answer Greg in the chat, does he start in the AHL next season, or is he eligible for the OHL? So he'll be starting in the AHL with the
Yeah.
Phantoms, and so will Bonk and Bjarnason and potentially Alex Bump, and the Phantoms suddenly have a pretty exciting AHL team.
Did they sign Alex Bump?
No, well, he's still in the Frozen Four.
Oh,
So
right, he's still
yeah,
in the tournament. Right,
yeah.
right.
So they for sure will sign him. Like Keith Jones
Right.
loves, obviously, as a Western Michigan alumni, he's gonna sign
True.
immediately.
Got to have your boys.
Yeah, exactly. And there's already names out there that they might hire the WMU coach too to replace him. I think Pat Firstweiler or something. He was on the
All
choice
right.
bench. Yeah, gonna be always the Flyer. Yeah, there you go. There's a little
So there's a
Barkey bowl.
goal. I mean, but again, the thing that I kind of picked up there that is not a concern, but something to note is like he is small, and I think in the NHL you're going to need to be like a super high end speedy guy to do this. But like you'll notice his skating stride is just kind of short and really
Mhm.
compact
Choppy.
and a little choppy, but like he gets the job done here. And I think the combination of the skill level with what he is able to do, it works really well together right now. But yeah, I mean that chatter. I mean, yeah, he's an AHLer, I think, and I think that I would not be surprised if he's maybe not, you know, this point a game 20-year-old AHL player who's
Mhm.
like, oh my god, we got this giant steal. I think he's going to take a little bit of time. The AHL is a pretty big adjustment. Like I think for me, I always with players moving from one level to the other, like I keep it reasonable and calm. You know, it's like if Denver Barkey is playing third line minutes next year in the AHL or whatever, and he scores 30 points, it's like, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to think that that's like some sort of disaster because his style of play is difficult to do in the NHL, right? Um, well, there you go, Sam Dickinson. Um, yeah, like his style of play is really difficult to do in the NHL, especially when you're pretty small. So adapting to that AHL sort of physicality and speed, you know, is gonna be pretty paramount. Because yeah, like I don't know if in the NHL he's gonna be this like super effective checking line defense first guy, right? I think he has the energy to try,
Mhm.
but in terms of trust from a coach, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll throw it to you. Any thoughts on what we just saw or what?
I think what I assumed from hearing about Barkey and everything and watching a little bit, I think that was a good game to like kind of summary of the good and the bad of just like this is what he does excellent, but this is also what he does that might not translate exactly perfectly. Like Flyers fans are all like not to just keep it in Philly or whatever, but with Morgan Frost was a similar thing where he up to this season, like coaching staff and everyone was like begging him to play with more pace, and he would do those little things that Barkey would do of like hanging onto the puck too much or playing with
Right.
a little bit like almost wanting to slow the game down, but he's not a Joe Thornton where he can slow the game down and it makes sense and he'll do that
Yeah.
and play like crazy. So yeah, so it's there obviously there's concerns, but I think overall right now where he is, it's still an exciting player for a third round pick, like to suddenly just make it work,
Yeah.
then a big we'll see. But
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, like, he was a third round pick, right? Like for me, I think Barkey was 32nd on my list that
okay,
year, like 33rd or something like that, like fringe first round. And because to me, it's like you're betting on him. You know, he's a little small, but you're betting on him overcoming it with sort of the talent profile he has, which very clearly in the OHL has been very successful, right? Like he's got skill and He's an exciting player, and definitely like you can't. I don't think I saw him in that game where I went, wow, he kind of turned off the gas pedal. Like he kind of shut
Yeah.
the car down there a little bit, which, it's more about, I've said this a little bit about players this year where it's like they kind of don't like if you're small, you physically do not take up a whole lot of space on the ice, right? So if he's out there on the defensive rush and trying to stick check guys, like he obviously has more ice to skate if he wants to be more physical and contact guys, but he also needs to be a little bit quicker to close those gaps with a stick check and be more dangerous in those situations. So it's not necessarily that he's taken the foot off the gas, but he is the bar is higher for a guy like him where especially if he does want to have this sort of 200-foot impact in the NHL, which I think he could, right? Like he's not old. And I think there's a lot of potential because especially in this game we saw the advantages of a guy like him where I don't think he's going to be an NHL line driver, like oh my god, we have a second line center who's going to play at both ends and quarterback and offensive rush all the time and blah blah blah. Like I don't think that's him. But as a guy who chips in off the puck everywhere and just sort of does what you need him to do, but also has really, really good open ice skating and skill, and the playmaking in this game too, you saw it a bunch of times where almost I think it might have been 4 or 5 times you saw him make some really threatening passes through the slot. There might have been 1 or 2 where there wasn't really a target to be had and maybe you'd like him to not make those types of things happen, but in general, I mean, yeah, I thought I agree. It was a really interesting look at sort of what he brings both on both sides of the spectrum and on both sides of the puck. He was killing a lot of penalties and you know, that that matters. You get to
Yeah.
see a different version of a player when they're killing penalties. And so it
Yeah.
wasn't perfect, but you see why he's out there killing penalties for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I almost wonder if he wasn't like this would never happen because I think the Flyers wanted to sign him, like of course, but I do wonder if he would be a candidate to go to the NCAA, like just play a year there instead of going to the AHL. Like
Yeah.
it's a hypothetical. It's all like there, but and of course we didn't even know that this was a possibility. I think when the Flyers signed
Yeah.
him, because I think he signed him like almost immediately. But yeah, it would have been interesting. Go to a good program, go to Michigan or something, and then I don't know.
It's
But
still possible, like it's
is it still
possible.
is it still
I
possible if
think
he signed? Like if he's, I thought that was the whole thing. Like if
actually,
you're
yeah,
signed to an NHL contract,
that's true. I think if you're signed already, I forgot he was already
because
signed.
because
So
yeah,
maybe
that was
not.
also a big thing of I wish Luchenko also maybe like that would have been
Yeah.
just go there when you're 19 and then
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, too, like I think both of those players are quite talented, and I think that, like at the end of the day, it's I would be cautious about sending players to the NCAA for one season, just so that you might hope they score more than they would in the
right.
AHL, right? Like I'd rather see those guys. Again, it's like your expectations have to be reasonable, right? Like I mean, Jet Luchenko earned his way onto the Flyers lineup this year at the start of the season, but do I think he's a full-time NHLer next year? I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't. But at the end of the day, like it's possible. And but if he falls short of the actually Luchenko would have to go back to
Yeah,
junior
yeah,
game,
it would be junior or like yeah,
junior of the NHL. So who knows what happens with him? But with Barkey, yeah, I mean, I think the AHL is right kind of where he should be because
okay.
he would be successful in college, right? Like I'm not disputing that at all, but I think that you want to push him a little bit, right? Like he's had a few years where he's been the king of the world essentially, right? Like he's been on London
Yeah,
scoring and scoring and scoring on a fantastic team and it's like, okay, kid, but like now the real work starts, right? Like now it's the AHL, you're a step away from the NHL and we want to see you develop from here, right? Like take steps positively, like you're going to be pushed and challenged and all that stuff and that's when coaching comes into play, right? Like that's when motivation comes into play, right? Like I think that you kind of have to get them to go, hey, our expectation is not that you're going to lead this team in scoring next year. That's not what we're thinking is going to happen. But hey, if it happens and you prove us wrong, go nuts, right? Like you kind of make it a goal for them rather than an expectation, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him because, especially for a third round pick, I think he's been very, very, very good to this point in his career. Not a perfect player, but lots and lots of potential. And I think that with the right coach who sees him for what he is, like they'll love him. Like he's just,
Mhm.
especially for the Flyers. Like if the culture of the Flyers or the guys he's rooming with Lehigh Valley can sort of ingrain that be a jerk, that high intensity, that Travis Konechny style of like fast and skilled, but kind of aggressive and annoying. If they can ingrain that in him at the pro level, then I don't know where he goes from here, but he could be something. I don't know what, but he could be something.
I think that's a perfect note to end on Barkey.
Right.
Yeah, he could be annoying, he could be something, but yeah,
We'll see. He could
we'll
be
see.
something. I don't know exactly what he'll be, but I think in the NHL he could be something.
Yeah, and so when now that I still have your time a little bit, we could
Sure.
spend. I wanted to spend a couple minutes on Carson Dorr, just like while obviously
Right.
just to get your thoughts on the player because obviously we're not like crushing Michigan State tape. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, I just wanted to get like your opinion on what they could get with the player of like he's going to be in the NHL. They already are obviously signed him. He's
Mhm.
wearing number 23. He's in practice today. I think he's on a practice between a line of Garnet Hathaway and Nick Delorier, so it's not great. Um,
All
but
right. Okay.
starting, you have to earn it. You have to earn it. But
Sure.
what's your just impressions of what like he could maybe be in the NHL or even just overall in the organization?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be what, 23 by the time next season
Yeah.
rolls around, so he's already pretty deep down the he's pretty deep down the road now. But I was watching him last night actually cuz I was watching just a bunch of players that have recently been signed or played in the NHL, and just I like to do that once in a while. I mean, I think with him, I think that a bottom six role, if he is an NHL player, is kind of where he probably will be. Like, I think that the best things I picked up about him was the puck protection and his ability to play under pressure. Like, I can see why the Flyers signed him, where, he just finds a way to get pucks through pressure, get pucks down low, like things that are not flashy but really effective. And as a college player, I can definitely see how a player, he's not the most amazing skater, he's not the most amazing shooter, he's not Denver Barkey, right? But I think I can see why a player like him would take a few years in college to sort of get to where he is now, where I think strength training comes in a lot, and just drills of protecting pucks along the boards and putting your body in between opponents and the puck. Like I was watching him and he was playing with Shane Van Saggy a little bit.
Mhm.
And Van Saggy's a guy who I think has a little bit more pace in his game and a little bit more pure sort of physical, like raw energy. But I think Dorwart complements that with like resilience and just like he's a guy who gets his butt in the way. Like that's the type of guy I saw there a lot of the time. And so I'll be very curious to see how he does in a little bit of in an NHL spurt. He didn't strike me as like, oh my god, this guy is a huge pickup for an NHL team. But compared to the other NCAA guys that have signed so far in this season, like he's definitely one of the more intriguing ones, I would say. That I think, based on how he plays and the size that he has and the puck protection ability, like maybe he could go out and be a checking line minutes eating guy who, and they get him for free, right? All they did
Yeah.
was pay money, and who knows where he goes from here. But it is interesting to see him playing with two whatever you want to call those two
Guys.
guys. Yeah, like
Two guys.
two like bruisers.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if he's that, but maybe they think he could be that. But for me, it's
Yeah,
more about like the finer sort of finesse parts of the defensive side of the game, or the possession side of the game in the offensive zone.
yeah, I think it was his first practice, and like I'm sure they don't play until Saturday in Montreal, so I'm sure they're
Right.
just like just get on the ice and play with guys. Like I don't think Delorier will even be in the lineup.
Okay.
So like I'm sure they're just like get on the ice with our fourth liners and then see what happens. But yeah, I my impression of like him was not a college free agent that you kind of see with all these like super high scorers, and then
Yeah.
they don't have anything that's translatable. The tools that are there, like they're signed because they put up a bunch of points, and then nothing happens, and then just like
Yeah.
you're an AHL, you're a TJ Brennan, but a forward. You're like
Yeah.
that kind of guy. Of course, Philly fans or Flyers fans know all about TJ Brennan.
Oh
But
yeah.
but I think he's like my go-to of just like an AHL guy that's like excels, like has a ceiling of just being elite in the AHL, whatever.
Right.
So yeah, so for me, what I saw from, and I didn't even get to see a full game of Dort, but just like some highlights and reading
Yeah.
some reports of just like he's a guy that the tools that are there and what he does on the ice is translatable in a bottom six role, like you just said. Like it's just a way that he approaches the game, like a decent enough motor that he could just be in a support role rather than just like he's put up a decent amount of points throughout his 3 years in college, but he's not going to be kind of that guy in the NHL. And if he does that, then I think the Flyers have a decent player, like maybe just a, I think I mentioned it before on like a podcast, but like a Ryan Poehling replacement because he's their fourth line center
Right.
right now, and obviously not as good as a skater as Poehling, but might just do more of the like more of the, I want to say legwork, but that like applies to skating, but more of like
Sure. The grunt work. Like,
yeah, the gutsy
yeah.
grinding, like
I mean,
whatever.
there are two sides of the coin in the NHL, right? Like, I think it's funny when people talk about how the NHL sort of like, oh, at certain areas of the game, speed and skill is in vogue, and then it turns to physicality, and then it goes back to speed and skill, and they think it's this like pendulum. But in reality, I think it's just the nature of the game that you can play a number of different styles of play and still be pretty effective, right? Like, I think that Dorwart's the type of guy where again, I'm not sure about how much of an NHL career there is there, but he has that strength on his feet, that resilience where it's like, maybe he's not the fastest, most skilled, whatever guy, but it doesn't matter that much, right? Like with Denver Barkey, it's almost like the inverse, where there's so much skill and there's a lot of speed and there's a lot of creativity and all of this stuff, but when things get grinded down a little bit and slowed down and there's more of these finer detail moments, of you want to keep possession of the puck somehow, Dorwart kind of is a better version, I would say. And so again, it's like how do you weigh those things, right? Like which one is better? I know which way I think I would go, but I mean, I think Dorwart is far more likely to be like a fourth line, third line NHL minutes eater than Denver Barkey is, right? Like I think there's just a very big difference in style of play that puts them in a different pathway. So yeah, I mean, I was interested to see him after I saw him get signed and was curious because someone also asked about him on the show on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, interesting player. Good to see that he'll get a crack in the NHL and see how it goes. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, a big we'll see. Well, yeah, you mentioned the show. So thank you so much, Will, for coming on. Just plug where people can
Anytime.
find you. Your channel has been like an excellent resource. I've tuned into the draft live streams of just like trying to get as much info as I can about these guys as like the second day is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, go just plug away.
Yeah, so I mean, you can check out what I do over at scouting.ca. That's the website I run, where you can access the data I track and some of the other data tools that I've built over there. So you can check those out. But also on YouTube, you can subscribe to Scouching, where we basically do live streams twice a week: Monday nights 8 p.m. Eastern, Thursday afternoons 2 p.m. Eastern. So there's one tomorrow if you want to swing by. And yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point where the reports on 2025 players are going to get going. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, I'll be able to get going on those. My goal is that I'll be able to start chipping away at them. I'm going to Columbus for the analytics conference next weekend. So when I'm
Oh,
back
nice.
from that, I'll be able to sort of sink my teeth into that project. And from mid-April through June, that's the bulk of what will be coming from the channel content wise. So you can check that out as well if you're interested in 2025 guys, which I imagine the Philadelphia Flyers, considering they
Yeah,
have like 48 picks this year,
yeah,
fans are probably going to be curious about these guys. And I will also mention before we go that the live stream for the draft, because you mentioned it, we are doing it this year. I'm not going to be at the draft in LA, so we're going to be here. We'll probably make some kind of little set and have some fun, and yeah, have a nice weekend together.
yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. Yeah, 2025 is like all everyone can talk about, and there was
Right.
a big debate on the PHLY show of yesterday of like how the Flyers going on a winning streak is is like wasting now the tank. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, by listening to Scouching,
Right.
Hagen's might drop and that he's fine. And like, oh, there's not a big difference between like if you get a pick 4 or pick 7 this year. Like, don't worry, guys. Kind of. So
Yeah. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know. I don't worry too much about where you go in the lottery, right? Like
right.
I look, Ivan Demidov went 5th overall last year. I would have killed to have him at 2, right? Like
Mhm.
things change. Other teams might see things very differently. Um, it's just the nature of the game, and I also am of the belief that in the last 5 years or so, the depth of the draft, like in terms of super high end talent, things level out really quick, right? Like whether you're picking at 4th or 12th or 13th, like you're gonna have an opportunity to get a good player, I would say.
Mhm.
And if you play your cards right, some good players often slip to the late first. The second round is, in my opinion, one of the most undervalued areas of hockey in general, where if you just pick the guys in the second round that probably are worth a bet in the first, but just slipped for whatever reason, like a Denver Barkey, for example, right? Like
Yeah.
you just take a swing on him because who cares? And so far, so good. So I don't know. I try to caution people not to worry too much about like the sky falling because you don't have the first overall pick or the third overall pick. Obviously, it would be nice to have a Connor Bedard, but look, Chicago got Connor Bedard. They're still not winning, so it's
Mhm.
no guarantee of anything. Obviously, I'm being a little bit reductive, but my point is like it's not super common to just draft a player or have a pick that completely transforms things. Um, so yeah, for Flyers fans,
Yeah.
when wherever you pick, I'm pretty sure you'll end up with a pretty good player. And look, I mean, you got Mitchkov, thanks to stuff
That's
like
fine.
this, and he
Yeah,
seems
exactly.
fine, right?
Yeah.
So if you pick 6th or 7th overall something this year, you never know what could happen. And in this year's class, I feel like you'll probably have a crack at a pretty decent player one way or the other.
Yeah, the one player I'd really, this is a personal preference, but Roger McQueen, I just want them to avoid just like around that area. And
Well,
then just like
yeah,
and then you could pick your Frondell at 6,
right.
you could pick your Jackson Smith if you drop down to like 8 or something.
Yep.
You can get your Caleb Denoyer or something, but
Yep.
yeah,
The
Roger
the
McQueen's not
the chatter on McQueen is not great these
not great.
days.
He
I
might
will
drop
tell you that.
anyways, but yeah.
I think he's gonna.
Yeah,
I
good.
think he
Thank you.
might.
Thank you for the
Yeah, I
confirmation that
think
if he
he's
drops out
gonna.
of the top 10, I could like relax a little bit and just that they're
Yeah,
gonna get a decent guy.
it's very quickly getting to the point where I'd be very surprised if he were drafted that high. Like I've heard from a couple of people, it would just be very surprising. So we'll see. But I'm with
Yeah.
you. I'm with you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Will,
Hey,
for coming on
anytime.
the show. Just the little shift by shift, and yeah, everyone subscribe down below. We didn't even mention or anything. We reached past 1,000 the other day, so it's great news and
Hey,
everything, and hit a
there you go.
milestone that we kind of set out before the end of the season. And yeah, it's been fun over here just doing these. We did a Jet one, Grubenkin, obviously we mentioned. We did Alex Bump one. Kyle and Ryan did one over there. And then yeah, we have other ones playing. Like I had Spencer Gill. I have a Spencer Gill game downloaded. Again,
All
defensemen
right.
are hard, but just finishing. And then we're gonna do 2025 as well. We're gonna crutch it before the lottery happens, before the reality of they're not getting Michael Misa. I want to do a Michael Misa one and just like for everyone to salivate over,
Yeah,
and then
that
he's
would be
not gonna.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice. And then the crushing
Oh.
realization it's probably not going to happen. It's
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah, whatever. Get the
Yeah,
content in for people.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. BSH forever. Subscribe. Yeah. Thank you. See ya.
See ya.